Well, let's put that in the actual quote that most of us have heard is, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And you know, with us, that could be in their pumps, like the red ones you saw a while ago. I started to wear red pumps today to preach in. Sorry about that. But there is a Muslim proverb that says, to understand a man, you've got to walk a mile in his shoes, whether they fit or not. Whoa. Now that adds a little bit something to it, doesn't it? Don't you love it when other cultures come into it? We don't really know the origin of this quote, but one of the earliest we do know is that one, as well as the next one. In To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Atticus Finch says to Scout, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Pretty powerful stuff, huh? We've all heard it, but do we live it? We've all heard it, and we may can quote any one of those four, but are they a way of life for me? If I have Christ living inside of me, should they be? Yes. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure you were there, because sometimes when I preach, I know some of you disagree with me, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with me on everything. As I said to someone, I think it was Ted. Was it Ted this week? I said, on Facebook, it was something. And I said, you don't have to agree with me for me to still be right. Yes. At least for me. Right for me is what I should have said. But he knows I can pick on him. He picks on me, and we pick back and forth, and it's okay. Because I know he loves me. How about that?
Amen. So do we.
And I love him back. I love you too. Just recently, I received an email from a colleague. And it was not directly to me, it was to other colleagues. And it was someone that I've known since I started the pastoral process. And in this email, I just kind of noticed it was kind of snippety. It was kind of bossy. It was kind of in my face. And I just thought, and another colleague contacted me and said, did you get this email? And I said, yes. And they said, well, I'm not going to tell you what they said. It sounded like. It was not real pleasant. The word was not very pleasant that they called that email. And they said, so what do you think about it? And I said, I need to think about it a minute. And then when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I've known this woman for years. I have known her for years. And I know her attitude most of the time. And I know this doesn't sound like the usual person I hear. So here's what I really think. I think maybe she was having a bad day that day. And I'm not going to write her off because of one email that was kind of, telling people, it was really kind of lining people up. I mean, it was an okay email. I mean, she didn't yell at anybody, but it was, it was very firm, let's say it that way. But I decided to put myself in her shoes that day and think about what she was dealing with on that particular subject. And once I thought about it from her perspective, I thought, well, I bet she's being bombarded with all sorts of things. And that would probably make me react, and I probably wouldn't have been nearly as nice as she was. You ever get like that? I generally have a 24-hour rule on responding to emails that upset me. I do much better when I wait a while to respond. Because if I do it right then, I'm liable to not be very nice. And then later I'm like, ugh, I shouldn't have done that. So I usually just say, okay, 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours. And then 24 hours later, sometimes I don't even feel like responding, and it's no big deal, and it's over, and it's gone. How about that? Maybe we could all use a little bit of that. Not so recently, I was pastoring a church, and I had a person in the church that was a member, and that person had met somebody, and that person moved I know some of you don't know anything about any of this. But the other person moved from another state to come and join that person where I was pastoring. It happens. There's some of you here in this church that are like that. And we are glad you are here. And we hope that some of the rest of you that are single, if you decide to meet somebody, that you meet them out of town and bring them here. Not meet them out of town and go to them. Bring them here. Tell them about the warm weather in Baton Rouge, okay? That usually will, especially northerners that are ready to get out of the cold. Well, this particular person, he came down here and he not necessarily here, but here in the South, I mean, came down to that church and started telling everybody what all of his accomplishments were. And you would have thought he was Jesus by all the stuff that he had done. And anything that any of the other church members started talking about that they did, he always could come up with a better way. He always could do it better than any of them. And some of the church members eventually, I don't mean as a group, but every now and then somebody would send me an email or call me or stop me and say, you know, this guy's just really aggravating me. He just really is annoying. In fact, if somebody new came in the church and he started telling his history, I could see a couple of other church members behind him wording, saying the same thing because they had heard his story so much they could all quote it. You know people like that? You know annoying people that are all about themselves and they know a better way. And one of them came to me one time and said, are you going to sit him down and never talk to him and tell him what he's doing wrong? And I said, no, I'm not. If he is annoying you, then why are you talking to me? You go sit down and talk to him in brotherly love. You sit down with him in brotherly love and see if you can't work it out. If he's annoying you that bad that you have to come and report to me, then it's time for you to talk to him. Not me, him. Because maybe he doesn't even know he's being annoying. And you know me, I've known my prayer partner, Carol. We've known each other for about 15 years, I guess. And in the last 10 years especially, we have become, we talk on the phone at least once a week. Usually 2 or 3 times a week, but at least once a week. And I was going on to her about how some people will come to me and complain, you know, and she's been my sounding board all these years, and she'll pray. And she said, well, that person really is annoying. She didn't even know him. But when I tell her some of the stuff he does, she said, he really is annoying, Keith. Well, why don't you do something about it? I said, well, you know, I got to thinking about it, Carol, and here's the thing. He moved from up north, where he had lived all of his life, to a whole nother culture we call the South. We have Southern mentality. Those of us that have been here all our lives, we don't even notice it because we think that's the norm. It's not necessarily the rest of the world norm, but it's normal for us. So we think a certain way and we do things a certain way, and we have expectations of everybody else around us for certain things. I mean, I was truly moved this week when I heard the mayor of Tuscaloosa on television talking about how people that had lost so much were still reaching out and helping everybody else after all the storms. You know why? Because that's a Southern thing to do. And what other mayors, generally speaking, will get on international television and say, people know that we're still that little light shining on the hill. You know, that's a church reference. And that we believe that God will see us through this and we will help each other through this. You know, not everybody in the world would have said those words. They would have worded it differently. But he was just being himself and speaking for his town. Well, anyway, I said, this person has moved down here to be with a partner that is a Southerner, has a built-in support system that they've been working on for years, has built a community around them. That person's come down here and has nobody. And because they're from up north, they're kind of typical northern No offense if you're from the north, but, you know, they have a tendency to be a little bit short and not as lovey-dovey and warm as fuzzy as we Southerners like to be. You know, is that okay? I don't mean to stereotype, but this was one of those kind of typical ones, okay? And while the church tried to reach out to him, it was still all about him. He was just fighting in his way into their lives, and he was going to show them how to do it, everything he got involved with. And I said, you know, he moved into our culture, not understanding our culture. And maybe he wants to help us. He's just not quite going about it the right way. But he really has no one except the partner, because everybody else is an outsider. He doesn't have the advantage of having a job down here where everybody has known him for years and have a career down here. He had to switch off. He had to become something different, and it was a hard struggle for him. And Carol backed up and she said, "Oh, my Lord. How in the world did you think of that?" I mean, I would have just thought, how annoying, how annoying, how annoying. I said, well, he is. He is annoying. But maybe I know why he's annoying. Maybe if I am to sit down and talk to him, maybe I would sit down and talk to him and tell him, you know, could we have this little, I need to build a relationship with that person before I have that talk, right? So he respects what I say and say, I really want to help you with this. I know that you've moved into a foreign country here. But here's how we do things. And if you will just kind of blend in and observe for a while how we do things, then maybe you can acclimate yourself to the area and people will start asking you, well, what is it that you do? What is your expertise? What is it? How would you do this differently? But here you need to be asked. You don't just go in and start telling people that have been doing something for years and years how they're doing it wrong. Come on. People on your job like that? You know some people like that. I know there's some people here in Baton Rouge like that too. But I won't call any names. Aren't you happy? Well, today in the reading, this story has always been a little perplexing to me. It's the day that Jesus arose. It's Easter Sunday, we call it. And it's later on in the day after Jesus has already talked to Mary in the garden and Jesus has, appeared to some of the disciples. But then he's walking away and there's a group of people on the road to another town, Emmaus. They're leaving the Holy Week celebrations. They're on their way back home. It's getting time to start the next work week. And here is Jesus walking with them all of a sudden. He kind of catches up with a group of people, and there are two of them standing there in particular that he starts talking to. And this is the part that perplexes me. It's Jesus, and they're actually followers of Christ. They're followers of his teachings. And they don't recognize him. Isn't that puzzling? And I think, well, why don't they recognize him? I mean, maybe he put a spiritual hex on them so they couldn't really tell who he was. Maybe. I mean, it was Jesus, and he had spiritual powers, and he was in spirit form, although they saw a body. Maybe Jesus came back and took his old body back for a little while.